So, Doug, it's great to have you here today. I mean, the dental industry is notoriously stagnant. We're still using a lot of the same tools at dental clinics that we were decades ago. We book appointments in the same way, we see our dentist in the same way. Why haven't we built a better patient experience until now?
The industry is terribly stagnant. And I think the reason for that is the two largest chains have done business the same way for the last 2 decades. I mean, each are multi-billion dollar entities. Both have over 800 clinics across the country, yet combined, they're less than 4% of the market. So they've got tremendous amount of room to scale with their existing business models. So what's the motivation for them to disrupt themselves? And that's where we see the opportunity at Tend. I mean, with a patient-first mindset, we've come into the marketplace and a laser focus on metro markets that they've largely ignored. We just believe you have to reinvent that patient experience to get people to care about their oral health.
And what are some of the lessons that you've learned from operating in New York City that you think will apply to other markets as you expand?
Oh, wow. Lots. So New York was absolutely the right place to start Tend, and we're proud to be part of the city's recovery story. Now, New York City is the largest dental market. It's $10 billion of general dentistry spend in one MSA. I mean, the demand is insane. And, it's also a top educational hub for the space. And so it just makes sense to be there. Now, it's a tough market too. Rent's expensive, marketing's expensive, construction's expensive, and residents of New York have lots of options with high expectations. It's like training with ankle weights. So at Tend, we feel like if we get the economic model right in New York City, it's just so much easier to scale in other markets as the cost curve comes down. So, it's a great place to start. People in New York have responded well to Tend. They like how we do dental differently. And I think people in other cities will as well.
If you make it in New York, you can make it anywhere, right?
I think there's a song about that.
I believe so. Doug, some people watching may not know your history as a successful repeat founder. What are some of the most important lessons that you've learned as a serial entrepreneur that you'd like to apply to Tend?
I think the lessons are different for each business, but two that are consistent are if you put the patient first always and just make sure that their needs are aligned with the clinicians, it's usually a recipe for success. And so, how we've put that into practice at Tend is we pay our dentists based off of patient satisfaction or NPS. What we don't do is pay them a commission based on procedures that they do, like our competitors. The second thing is just hire exceptional people. So at a clinical level, we only hire 5.4% of the dentists that apply. We're pretty selective.
So, Doug, when you and I first met in February, it was the end of February. It was New York. It was a cold, bitter morning. Great meeting. And then fast forward to this summer when we reconnected to take a look at this deal. And of course, what happened in that intervening time period was a global pandemic. And I think when you and I first met, we had no idea, obviously, that this was going to happen. It was one of the last in-person meetings that I did, honestly. And a global pandemic where you're in the dental business would likely have some sort of impact on the company. And yet, we were as excited as ever. I think you were excited as ever as well. Can you talk a little bit about the change that you think is going to come in the dental industry, why Tend is well positioned there? And what kind of role has Tend played in New York's recovery so far?
You're right. When we met in February, no idea this was on the horizon. As the numbers of COVID began to skyrocket in March, and the city started to shut down, we realized we had started a business where we're putting hands in people's mouths in the center of a global pandemic. It was like, it didn't feel great. But as the city started to recover from the peak, and essential businesses started to come back online, we found out dental was different. A couple of things. Dental doesn't go away. There's always a need for emergency services, and you have to do restorative services to make sure you don't get to that emergency point. And, you can't do dental at home. You can't clean your teeth at home. You can't give yourself a filling. You just have to come in. And so when you think about the dental experience that we've built, it's by appointment only, so we don't have people coming in and browsing. You go to a private operatory where you're seen. Our clinicians are used to dealing with infection control. I mean, hygienists and dentists have worn gloves and masks for years because of the AIDS epidemic. So these things really insulate us from a lot of the negative aspects of this pandemic. And so Because of those things, since we've reopened in June, the business has recovered very, very strongly. Our studios are performing at revenue, new patient numbers that exceed where we were pre-pandemic.
Can you talk a little bit about the patient journey when somebody comes in to visit a studio for the first time, and perhaps even before that, as they're thinking about visiting the Tend studio or considering booking an appointment, and who was Tend created for?
I mean, the booking flow is more than just picking a time in a clinic. You literally get to say what flavor of paste you want used as we're, polishing your teeth. You get to tell us whether you'd prefer to be quiet or chatty. You get to tell us what you'd like to see on the screen if you want a distraction. Do you want to watch The Office? Or do you want to watch South Park? So it lets you kind of curate your visit, and it takes the edge off a little bit. It makes people feel like, hey, this isn't going to be as clinical as I thought it was. The other thing is it just lets you do it on the phone. I mean, who wants to pick up and call and be on hold and talk to someone at the front desk and see what's available and then book it? Everything's digital, everything's seamless. And it's also, what's the patient responsibility? You put in your insurance information. We go ahead and run your eligibility. We come back to you and say, this is what your visit is going to cost. And there's a Tend guarantee behind it. So if we're wrong, we eat it. And so just being armed with the pricing information before you make a decision should be required, but it's not. In a typical dental setting, a lot of times I didn't even know what a visit cost me till a month after the visit, and the bill had already been submitted to my insurance. Did I know my guest responsibilities? So, we've done a lot of things in that booking flow besides just time and date and where. It's what's going to be in the visit and how much it's going to cost. We've talked a little bit about the front end of the patient journey with our digital interface, the booking, the curating your visit, determining what things are going to cost before you show up. But the way Tend is different once you arrive is you're greeted at the front, and then you're taken to our brushery where you can try a variety of dental products and freshen up before your appointment, and then you're taken back to a private suite. So the way that compares to a lot of other practices are you come in and they hand you a clipboard and there's an administrative task. And so I think Tend just feels it biases more towards the side of hospitality instead of clinical. Everybody's visit is unique. You've basically told us what you're interested in, what you're not interested in when you've booked the appointment. So if you have an interest in veneers or ortho, we can share those with you and what can be done. The other thing we've done is we've put screens in each operatory so we can visually show you, the cavity or what we're going to do for you instead of just tell you. And so these sorts of things put our patient at ease and know that the technology we've deployed is giving them cutting edge care.
I love it. Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, John.